Click the link below to join the Outsider Club right now. Find out how to avoid and profit from the economic collapse.
Hey everybody, I'm Christopher Green. You're tuning into AMTV, Alternative Media Television. A very serious movement is growing within the United States right now, as I speak, as I deliver this video to you. A very real and very serious movement for secession. States like Colorado, California, Texas, Arizona, and more are urging their state representatives to secede from the Union, to break away from the centralized power and control that makes up the Orwellian police state as it is in America this very given day, March 4th, 2014. You know, the grievances people are citing is the people don't think that the central federalized government is paying attention to them or hearing what they have to say. Top of the list of concerns are gun control and this push to confiscate weapons in the US of A. We're seeing this in places like Connecticut right now. We see this with not just the rhetoric, but the legislation and executive orders being pushed by the Obama administration itself. Really its own body now bypassing Congress. So we see this anger, we see this angst, we see people feeling like they're just not being listened to, that our representatives aren't representing us. They also are citing very tragic and costly taxes such as Obamacare that are increasing the cost of living dramatically for everyday Americans, some 200 and 300%, premiums in some cases. And they're deciding that instead of trying to get their politicians to act, they're instead going to go to their local state representatives, which they have more contact with and more control over, and decide to just secede altogether. You know, the republic itself, this constitutional republic, was set up so states could do just this. There's nothing more American than seceding or wanting or proposing to secede from the Union, this federalized superpower that it is today, a bankrupt superpower. You know, this isn't some kind of right-wing or even left-wing crackpot idea, nor is it some false hope or a utopic view of what the world could be. It's a very real thing and a very serious reality that is taking shape and is taking place and gaining momentum state by state all across the Union today. You know, people citing so many grievances, people so angry the way things are headed, angry that their phone conversations and their text messages are being wiretapped by our Orwellian centralized power that makes up the national spying agency as it is today. People don't like the drone strikes of innocent civilians and children and American citizens, as was the case as the murder of Anwar al-Awlaki and his teenage son not too long ago. People don't like people like Christopher Dorner being lit up in a ball of flames, a fireball set by the local police department without judge, jury, or representation from an attorney. So people are speaking up. They're speaking out. You know, many of you probably remember, some of you don't, but many of you probably remember when the USSR, the former Soviet Union, collapsed. It was a shock to many of you, and it really happened overnight. Here, a giant, emerging, rising superpower that was supposedly and propagandized to us a threat to the United States. Some of you remember probably having to get under your desk. For some reason, that was supposed to protect you from a nuclear bomb. See how they were propagandizing you even then, selling you false ideas and a false reality to really just kind of garner more fear within the American people. But you see, the collapse of the former Soviet Union happened overnight and disintegrated, and we're seeing the consequences of that fallout today. But for some reason, Americans don't think that it can also happen here in the United States. You know, the country itself and the Union is a very fragile thing, based on freedom and based on the integrity and well-being of its connected units, of its connected states. You probably heard the saying that you're only as strong as your weakest link. So now that we have states like Colorado, rural parts of these areas, California, Texas, and Arizona, now putting together real, very serious legislation to secede, asking their representatives to push this objective should raise an eyebrow to everyday Americans. You know, I was watching a clip of Harry Dent. Some of you might be familiar with him. He was on CNBC yesterday. And he's predicted that the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average specifically, is likely to rise to some near 17,000 in the not too distant future over the next few weeks. And then he's predicting that the Dow will drop a cataclysmic multi-thousand point drop to around Dow 6,000. Now, can Harry Dent predict the future? Can you predict the future? Can I? Of course not. None of us have a crystal ball. But here's what we know. Every major bubble that's been blown up by the Federal Reserve, these conjured 0% interest rate bubbles into infinity, based and a byproduct of the printing presses at the Federal Reserve, always results and is a historical track record of bigger booms and bigger busts. Just like what we saw with the 2001 dot-com bust, just like what we saw in 2008 with the real estate and stock market bust. Now the bubble even bigger. And what that promises us, with a degree of, I would say, close to 99.999% certainty, is that the next bust will be far bigger, greater, and more massive than anything we've ever seen before. And this is what people, intellectuals like Harry Dent, many of you that are just as smart, maybe a whole heck of a lot smart, probably a lot smarter than me, are expecting the same thing. And I want you to imagine a world where the Dow is trading at 6,000, where we have an economic calamity worse than anything we've ever seen, worse than 2008, and worse than the Great Depression. If you don't think the secessionist movement is picking up steam now and gaining strength, imagine what it's going to look like under those circumstances. Imagine the anger. Imagine the palpable rage coming from the regular John and Jane on the street, who no longer feels represented at all and is honestly being taken over by an Orwellian centralized force known as the federal government today. Do you not think that these people will be in support and help these movements to garner and gain even more steam in the not too distant future? These are all very important things to think about. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you now support a secessionist movement in your state, or would you be open to it in the not too distant future? Because folks, this is where it's all headed. You know, if you can't control your representatives, if you're not being represented by those people, then the states themselves and the people have every right to secede from that union. And it's exactly what's happening now, state by state by state. Again, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And this is what's happening in America. I'm Christopher Green. Get it out everywhere, make it viral, hard hitting it in your face. Click that link below and share it everywhere.
I think we see another correction crash that is larger than the last one. Every bubble, and these are bubbles, have taken us to new highs, and every crash has taken us to new lows. So this is hitting right at that trend line, about 17,000, maybe several weeks from now, where we would hit this, and then the next downside target would be around 6,000. So this is actually a big pattern.
By when?
It's easy to spot.
By when?
By 2016.
So that's
it takes 2 to 3 years for a major crash. Yeah, that is soon.
Ron and Son,
And
what do you
I
say
think
to
this will
that?
be the most dangerous period in people's lives in investing.